Today we're going to look at the golden age of Islamic civilization. The tolerance of Arab rulers and Muslim domination of Indian Ocean trade together contributed to a golden age in Islamic civilization in which Islamic culture became a blending of Arab, Persian, Egyptian, and ancient Greek and ancient Roman traditions. The result, an era of stunning intellectual and cultural achievements. Contributions in the areas of math, science, medicine, art, and literature would influence many civilizations, including the African trading kingdoms and later, Europeans during the Renaissance. As we've been going through this unit, we've been learning it kind of in terms of patterns that we already know that can help us understand what we're seeing now. For example, we saw how Islam spread in the context of how universal religions generally spread by appealing to the poor, voluntary conversion, through trade routes, merchants, missionaries, and with the borders of a state that adopts that religion as its source of unity. We have seen how nomads can be great conquerors in previous units, focusing on their strengths in terms of movement, survival, general toughness you need to live that lifestyle, and ability on horseback, in addition to not being constrained by like the stricter rules that civilizations tend to impose on themselves. That was true of the Arab Empire too. We've also seen that long distance trade tends to bring in new ideas and new wealth to civilizations, and policies of tolerance tend to lead to a more peaceful society and an easier time ruling an empire. So today, following that trend, we're going to look at a golden age. We've learned about golden ages before. One of the things we've learned about golden ages is that they tend to require political stability, and the Arab Empire certainly provided that. With the political stability of the Arab Empire, as we've seen in the unit, trade increased throughout the land, bringing information and goods to the empire. And remember what a big chunk of territory we're talking about. Like, have a good look at that map. We've also learned previously that golden ages generally tend to share characteristics. Clearly, these societies have to have a big enough food surplus to support some really significant specialization. So like not just people who are extra who can like make weapons, but like scholars and what we might recognize today as universities. Specialization and education tend to lead to new innovations, new ideas that make life better. Golden ages also tend to be relatively peaceful, historically speaking anyway. And we've learned that tolerance tends to promote cultural diffusion, which allows the place that experiences it to benefit from lots of ideas and technologies from other places and adapt to them and build them and make new things. So generally, long-distance trade and tolerance bring in money, which can help fund new technology. And the Islamic Golden Age follows that pattern. As an example of the kinds of ideas and technologies that can make a huge difference in the societies they touch through cultural diffusion, we can look at something as simple as paper. We take it for granted now, but paper making was a technology from the East that, as you can see on the map, gradually made it west, and it made it to the Arab Empire around the 8th century. Have a look at how long it took to get to Europe. And just think about that for a while. So, in the year 622, we have the rise of Islam and the Arab Empire. And by the 10th century, with the introduction of paper, it's possible for Islamic scholars to easily write manuscripts, so communicate ideas on paper, that's important, and save classic works of antiquity by translating them into other languages. What that means is all of the scientific and philosophical and cultural discoveries of ancient Greece and ancient Rome that we learned about in the classical period were preserved in the Arab Empire and translated so they were made accessible to even more places. This is significant because in Europe, especially in Western Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire, this knowledge was basically lost. And if not for the Arab Empire's preservation of it, who knows what life might be like today. This empire, this Arab empire, assimilated the scientific knowledge of civilizations they overran, including ancient Greek, ancient Roman, Persian, Chinese, Indian, Egyptian, and Phoenician civilizations to produce just an astounding volume of accomplishments in algebra, calculus, geometry, chemistry, biology, medicine, astronomy. You guys are going to see a lot of more specifics in your classwork. But when we talk about these developments, we're talking about like the ability to perform surgery that was developed in the Arab Empire. Crazy. Being able to cut a person open and not kill them is impressive in any context, but especially in this time period when knowledge wasn't nearly as advanced as it is now. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad in the Arab Empire had the largest selection of books in the world at the time. What produced this golden age was long-distance trade, which promoted cultural diffusion, so technology and ideas can spread and benefit new regions, and generating income necessary for specialists to be supported, either having money themselves or through the larger tax base that would allow the government to employ more specialists and bureaucrats and invest in high culture and infrastructure. Tolerance was key to this golden age. Instead of killing, exiling, or alienating the conquered, often rulers of the Arab Empire were able to incorporate them and make use of their specialized skills and knowledge to benefit the empire. And a great example of this was in Islamic Spain in Cordoba. Islamic Spain was maybe the most multicultural society the world had seen to that point, maybe. It was a center of commerce, religion, scholarship, and academic accomplishments. In Islamic Spain, for the time period, Muslim leaders were religiously tolerant, allowing Christians and Jews to be major contributors to Spanish society as it reached heights few societies in the world had seen. Cordoba is, one more thing. This whole time period, this golden age, will end eventually. Scholars kind of disagree over when. Most often, the year given is 1258, when, tell me if you've heard the story before, nomads from Central Asia overrun the settled civilization, sacking Baghdad, where that House of Wisdom was in modern-day Iraq. Other scholars point to the year 1492, when the Catholic Reconquista of Iberia, which is Spain and Portugal, was complete. And we're going to start our tour through Golden Age Spain, or Golden Age Islam, in Spain, in Arab Spain, in the city of Cordoba. There's an arrow pointing to it on the map. And just like, enjoy these pictures. Cordoba became a huge icon for the Muslim states, as it was a place of innovation and impact regarding irrigation systems, public places, and architecture. Not only were the creations coming from Cordoba impressive, but the city itself was massive, and, at the time, the largest in the world. And just have a look. It's beautiful. I really want to go. Of note, and this will become more significant when we start to contrast with how the rest of Christian Europe was doing during this time. It was clean, it was organized, there were public works, and there were marvels of architecture that are just still breathtaking, which are up on your screen. These buildings are huge and beautiful and still standing. Cordoba was also a great center of learning. There was a huge library where, scholars would come to study. And Muslim Spain was famous for its poetry and its tolerance, which is something that doesn't often exist in history, which is kind of too bad. Moving to the other corner of the Arab Empire, we're going to have a look at Baghdad. Baghdad is in modern-day Iraq. It is in where ancient Mesopotamia used to be, if you want like even more historical context. It's a part of the world. Remember, ancient Mesopotamia, flat, easy to invade, flooded often, invaded often. During the Arab Empire, it was solid. And it was just really, really cool to look at. It's too bad it doesn't exist like this anymore, because I would have loved to see it. Baghdad was planned as a round city, like a wall, and then, sorry, and then like different layers kind of leading into the center of town where you would have the House of Wisdom. The House of Wisdom was where scholars from all over the empire would come and collaborate, read those volumes, translate old classical antiquity, develop new technologies and ideas. And it's just so sad that it doesn't exist anymore, because I would have really liked to go. And so this brings us to our notes. For the golden age of Islamic civilization, what you need to retain is what caused it. Tolerance meant that the Arabs were able to use ideas from other civilizations and cultures. Add that with the trade that they had going through the Trans-Saharan trade network and the Indian Ocean trade network. This made the Arab Empire wealthy, and the diffusion of ideas and technologies from other parts of the world, like remember the number 0 from India, paper from China, gunpowder, enriched and strengthened the Arab Empire. So this money pays for scholars, and tolerance to ideas from other places gives them a lot of good, heavy ideas to chew on and create amazing things. This was a blending of Arab, Persian, Egyptian, and classical Greek and Roman traditions, leading to an era of stunning intellectual and cultural achievements, which you're going to read about in your classwork. One example, if you had to point to a concrete place, is Cordoba, which we looked at. Another is Baghdad with its House of Wisdom, which was a dedicated space for scholarship where classical Greek philosophy and literature were translated into Arabic by scholars. And the effects of this were many, but in terms of the world history, like kind of big story, it's that the big developments from Greece and Rome would have been lost to history, probably, if not for the Arab Empire. They preserved this classical knowledge, brought it to new parts of the world, developed it, which in itself was great. This also is going to permit Europe later, after the Middle Ages, in the next period of history, to kind of rediscover its own path, its own past, and grow strong from it as well. However, during this time period, not to put too fine a point on it, Europe is going to be more like this. So in our next unit, we get into the Dark Ages and whether or not we should call them that, but like medieval times in Europe. And it'll be essentially the opposite story that we've been telling for Islamic civilization. In Europe, you're going to see a society that's insecure, weak, intolerant, no safe roads, no long distance trade, a land-based economy, so no way to move up in society. Pretty big time in the gutter.